Hey everyone, my name is Stina. Welcome to my live stream. Oh my goodness, I've got to tell you, I've had one person in particular that says something about me talking to my, in the chat. Well, I can say to that person, I have no intention of not doing this because for one thing, I love you guys. And thank you for being here. And for another thing, I'm polite. I just can't help it. And so that, I want to thank you, Wendy Williams, Interested Chat, for your super chat. Thank you so much. I love you. And like I said, I'm not going to stop doing it, but I will try to get through the presentation first. So I don't want you guys to think that I am ignoring you. And then we'll open up after the presentation is finished, and then I'll hang out with you guys a little while. We can chat back and forth if you want. So yeah, so that's what it's going to be. So and I was just reminded, you guys, before I get started, from Kelly Struggling, that this is the four-year anniversary of the tragic deaths of the crash of Dominic Russo and Damian Flanagan. So I didn't even think of that because I've been so busy. So thank you, Kelly, for reminding us and why we're all here, because I do think it matters quite a bit. Okay, so with that said, I'll pull up my notes here. So what brought this up? Another viewer brought up, or somebody in the comments had brought up, oh my goodness, where is this? Had brought up that, let me pull this up, I'm sorry. Had brought up that there's a habeas corpus petition, and I had no idea. So now I do. So I'm pulling this up. Hold on, bear with me for 1 second here. Because I was so I gotta tell you guys, I was so nervous before this because I do work full time and they had me until 5:30, and it's like, oh my goodness, I'm not even ready for the live stream tonight. So thank you, just letting you know what this is. Okay, I got this. Sorry, guys. Okay, so anyway, as I was saying, hold on. Okay, so that viewer had commented about this habeas corpus and what that was about. So then I went investigating a little bit. So I do want to talk about that. So that's what spurred this, or gave me the idea for this live stream tonight. So let me pull this up. Okay, so this is, so I wanted to start by saying a new explanation has entered the Mackenzie Shirilla case. So according to a newly filed federal habeas corpus petition, Mackenzie, Dominic Russo, and Damian Flanagan may have been traveling through that area because Mackenzie had groceries or a package of produce waiting for her at a 24-hour pickup location nearby. And that could matter to a certain extent, because prosecutors argued that Mackenzie selected an isolated road where she could deliberately crash the vehicle without attracting immediate attention. So evidence of a legitimate destination could challenge that part of the prosecution's narrative. But it is important to be very precise about what this new claim would explain and what it would not explain. And just to let you know, I'm not an attorney, so I did some fast research on this. So if there's any attorneys listening and I've got any of the facts incorrect, please let me know in the chat. I would appreciate that. So with this petition, a grocery pickup could explain why they were in that area, but it does not automatically explain why the car accelerated or why it reached nearly 100 miles per hour speed. It does not explain the reported full throttle data, and it does not explain why no braking was recorded before the car struck the building. So tonight, we're going to examine the new habeas petition, what Mackenzie's attorneys are alleging her trial counsel failed to present, and whether these newly raised possibilities actually answer the central questions surrounding the crash, or simply place more possibilities around them. So, and as I said, it's for people that's just entered for this live stream, my name is Stina. This is Motive and Method, where we look closely at language, framing, contradictions, and the stories people build around the evidence. For anyone who may be new here, I am not an attorney and I am not a psychologist. I have a bachelor's degree in communication with honors and more than 25 years of experience in professional writing and verbal communication. My focus is not to diagnose anyone or offer legal conclusions. My focus is language, what people say, how they say it, what they emphasize, and sometimes what remains unanswered beneath all of those words. And I want to make one thing clear too before we begin. This is an active legal claim. Mackenzie's new attorneys are making allegations in a petition. The filing of that petition does not mean the allegations have been proven, and it does not mean that a court has accepted them. We are examining the arguments being made. And really, I'm just really examining the one argument about the grocery and also what happened with the car, according to Steve. So I want to say, I kind of explained it earlier, but before we get into the grocery claim, let's briefly explain what this filing actually is. A petition for a writ of habeas corpus is a way for someone in custody to ask a court to examine whether that custody violates federal law or the United States Constitution. It is not simply another opportunity to tell the original judge, we disagree with the verdict. And it is not automatically a new trial. Mackenzie's petition reportedly raises several constitutional arguments, including the claim that she received ineffective assistance from her trial attorney or attorneys. So, in plain English, her new legal team is arguing that the attorneys who represented her at trial failed to investigate, develop, object to, or present certain evidence that could have affected her defense. Under the legal standard for ineffective assistance, it generally is not enough to show that another lawyer may have handled the case differently. The petitioner must argue both that the attorney's performance fell below a reasonable professional standard and that the failure caused actual prejudice, meaning that there is a reasonable probability that the result might have been different without those errors. Now, that distinction is crucial. So the question is not merely, could her attorneys have introduced the grocery evidence? The question is, was failing to introduce it constitutionally unreasonable? And was that omission significant enough to undermine confidence in the outcome? But first, let's hear Steve Shirilla discuss the newly raised explanation for why they may have been in that area. So let me pull this up.
Or an organic, good food kind of, local honey, good stuff, for you. And my daughter and Dom were eating healthy. So they have lockers outside. So if you buy, say, potatoes, she'll put the potatoes in the locker, give you the number, and then you can come by at any time and pick it up. It was a convenience for the customer. So it makes, now, I don't know if they were going there again for sure, because I don't know. But that would be on the route. That would be the quickest way to.
So one of the so you heard Steve does not seem at all sure at that point, and this was soon after the crash documentary came out on Netflix that he gave that interview, and it does not sound that he is sure of that. I don't know if at that point Mackenzie is claiming, and they're kind of wanting to show that she doesn't remember, but that could be an explanation, or they're trying. I hate to say this, but they're trying to, they could be trying to fool us. I don't know for sure, because I don't know how much Mackenzie has really told them or whether she really remembers. Although I've got to be honest, I believe she does, but that's just, I don't have any proof to that. But anyway, one of the persistent questions in this case has been why Mackenzie drove onto that particular road in the early morning hours. So the prosecution treated the location as part of the evidence of intent. Now, this petition is offering a possible ordinary destination, as I said. So this may be, what Steve said, this may be one of the most concrete new claims being raised. According to reports about the petition, a local grocer had allegedly left a package of produce for Mackenzie at a 24-hour pickup location near the crash site. The petition argues the trial counsel possessed this information but did not present it, even though the grocer reportedly testified about other matters. But there is something else in Steve's wording that caught my attention. In that clip, he does not present the grocery pickup as something he knows with certainty. His language is hesitant. He appears to be saying essentially, I don't know, but maybe. So how did the claim move from a possibility in Steve's telling to something presented much more definitively in the petition? And now there may be, like I said a minute ago, there may be a reasonable explanation. He may not have known all the facts before this interview, and he didn't realize he'd be talking about this. And additional documentation may have been located later. The attorney may possess evidence that Steve had not personally reviewed, but it is still a distinction worth noticing, I think. So if the grocery pickup is now being offered as a firm factual explanation for why Mackenzie was on that road, then the supporting evidence should establish more than the mere possibility that groceries were available nearby. And I understand why the defense believes that matters. If the prosecution's theory was that Mackenzie deliberately chose a remote location for the crash, then evidence that she had a legitimate reason to drive there could weaken that portion of the narrative. It may explain the route, and it may explain the destination, and it may show that being on that road was not by itself suspicious. But those are not the only questions in this case. Even if a grocery order is verified, we still have to ask, why did the car accelerate? Why did it reportedly reach nearly 100 miles per hour? Why was the accelerator reportedly fully depressed in the final seconds? And why was no braking recorded before impact? So the grocery claim may challenge the prosecution's explanation for where they were going. It does not independently establish what occurred inside that car once the acceleration began. And that is the line I think we have to hold throughout this discussion. A fact can be relevant without answering everything, and a possibility does not become a certainty simply because it appears in a legal filing. And also, as kind of I alluded to, there's got to be some proof. There better be some proof, some record that she picked up, or that she was going to go pick up that order that day. Not just that it was there waiting for her. I would think there would be receipts of some kind. Maybe they do, because I hope they do, because that's not going to look very good if there's no evidence to that. And if I was the attorney, I would not take the case if there wasn't the evidence. So we'll see about that. So Steve has also repeatedly said that the public has misunderstood what happened and that evidence exists which would change the way people view Mackenzie's case. But when the conversation reaches the speed itself, listen to the answer.
Now, I can't explain the speed. Oh, sorry. I can't explain the speed.
Yes, I had to play that. He had to say it twice. Short clip. It's kind of what if you listen to this entire interview, Steve is always giving theories. It could have happened this way. It could have happened that way. But there's no proof to what he's saying, just as he's saying that there's no proof for what the prosecution alleges and what put his daughter in prison either. So that's the central problem, I think, of the entire issue, of the entire thing. Steve cannot explain the speed. I'm not saying he should personally be able to, explain this, the speed of the automobile crash. I will say that in this new filing, they're bringing up POTS again. So that's another thing that supposedly hopefully they've got some evidence to that. But even then, and this is going off what I had planned to say, but even then, from what I know of POTS, it's not going to make you clamp down on the accelerator. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, if you know a lot about POTS and you know that it can do that. I know that maybe certain, seizures might be able to do that. But as intensely as she was clamping down for as long, relatively speaking, as she was, I think that's going to be a hard sell. But anyway, Steve is publicly arguing that the state's conclusion is wrong about everything pretty much. And when someone asks us to reject the established explanation, the alternative cannot consist only of saying, I do not know what happened, but I know it was not intentional. Those are two different claims. I cannot explain it as honest, but therefore it could not have been deliberate, does not logically follow from that admission. And the grocery store pickup may offer a reason for being there, but it does not explain the speed. A mechanical failure could theoretically explain acceleration, but experts checked out the mechanics of that car and did not find anything, from what I understand. It would require supporting evidence, whatever is being claimed here, which the prosecution did have in all the mechanics of the vehicle, I feel, and the black box. The unanswered speed is not a minor detail sitting at the edge of the case. It is the event around which the rest of the case is built. And when that fact cannot be explained, the argument begins to move away from one supported alternative and toward a collection of possible alternatives. And so at this point, we have one newly emphasized explanation. They may have been on that road to collect groceries. But Steve does not stop with the question of why they were there. He begins expanding the argument into a much broader collection of possibilities. And this next section is where the structure of that argument becomes particularly revealing. So when Steve is asked what he believes happened in this interview, he does not offer one alternative account. He describes what he calls a perfect storm. So listen to how he moves from what he knows to what he believes.
God, okay, to be honest, I don't know. I don't know. I know the car crashed. I know Davion and Dominic lost their lives. I know my daughter was lucky to be alive. I know she went through I believe she was falsely accused. The charges she was accused of, I'm not completely getting away. She's not completely innocent. She was driving a car, and it should have never left the juvenile court. And it should have been vehicular homicide or reckless vehicular homicide. And I don't think you could even prove reckless with what evidence is not available to the prosecutor. I don't know. I think it was. I would, if I had to give my guess, I think it's a bunch of things. I think it's a perfect storm. I'm pretty good. She was probably coming down there 60, 70 miles an hour. Okay. One theory is.
And I have to say, I can't help myself. Everything is a possibility, in my opinion, with what Steve is saying. It's a perfect storm of possibilities, but the one possibility isn't that Mackenzie did it on purpose. And that's, he just will not admit to that. So I had to put that in there. So Steve says he believes it was a perfect storm and refers to Dominic and Davion being killed and Mackenzie nearly losing her life. I stopped the clip there because the complete explanation continues for several minutes. So after that point, and that was kind of a long clip I just played, actually, relatively speaking, Steve begins listing a number of possible events. He suggests Mackenzie may already have been driving, like you heard, 60 or 70 miles per hour. He raises a possibility something mechanical happened to the Toyota. He suggests the gas pedal may have become stuck. He describes the car hitting a dip in the road, potentially going airborne and causing the event data recorder to activate. He suggests the side airbags may then have deployed. And later, he says that because the black box data were recorded in intervals, it is possible Mackenzie applied the brakes between recorded data points. But Steve also acknowledges that there is no proof she braked. In fact, his words are essentially, I'm not saying that happened because there is no proof, but it could have happened. And that sentence kind of captures the entire rhetorical structure of this, of Steve's defense of his daughter here, I think. So, he goes over a lot of possibilities. It could have been a medical event. It could have been a mechanical failure. It could have been a stuck accelerator. It could have been the dip in the road. It could have been the airbags. She could have braked between data points. Any one of those events may be theoretically possible, but possibility is not evidence that an event occurred. And when multiple unsupported possibilities are stacked together, they can create an emotional sense of uncertainty that is much greater than the evidentiary support for any one of them. And that is what I mean when I say that language can create a cloud around established facts. The argument does not necessarily establish, here's what happened. Instead, it becomes, here are enough things that might have happened that perhaps no one can be certain. And uncertainty can be persuasive, especially when it is combined with the grief of a parent who lost two young men he knew and nearly lost his daughter as well. So I do not doubt that Steve desperately wants an explanation that allows him to believe Mackenzie did not do this intentionally, although many of us believe, and this was on record from what I understand, that he actually did admit this in the hospital, that he knew she did it on purpose, allegedly. That is the documents that I've heard about. So, I mean, it's human that he would want an answer to that, and that human that he'd want his daughter out of prison too. But emotional sincerity and evidentiary reliability are not the same thing. A person can deeply, honestly believe an alternative explanation without having evidence sufficient to prove it. So the habeas petition does not necessarily have to prove the entire defense case at this stage, merely by listing omitted evidence. But Mackenzie's attorneys do have to do more than identify choices they would have made differently. On the ineffective assistance claims, they are arguing that trial counsel's omissions were constitutionally deficient and prejudicial, that the omitted evidence could have affected the reliability of the result. Regarding the groceries, the defense may argue, had the judge known Mackenzie had an ordinary reason to be in that area, the prosecution's theory that she selected an isolated location would have been weakened. That is an identifiable legal argument, but the court will also have to consider that omitted evidence, that the court would also have to consider that omitted evidence alongside the totality of the evidence, not in isolation. The court may need to determine whether the grocery claim is supported by documentation, whether Mackenzie actually intended to retrieve the order that morning, and whether trial counsel knew or reasonably should have known about the evidence. It may also matter why Steve described the grocery pickup with uncertainty, while the petition now appears to present it much more definitively. There may be a reasonable explanation for that difference. Steve may not have known, as I said earlier, all of the facts at the time of the interview, or additional evidence may have been obtained later. But the court will still have to evaluate what the evidence actually establishes. A legitimate destination could weaken part of the prosecution's narrative, of course, but it does not erase the acceleration data. And evidence explaining why Mackenzie may have been on that road does not necessarily provide a reasonable alternative explanation for what happened once the vehicle began accelerating. So this entire discussion comes down to one distinction, in my opinion. Explaining why they were there is not the same as explaining what happened there. The grocery evidence may supply a benign reason for driving into that area. That could matter. But the claim should not be stretched beyond what it can reasonably establish. The groceries may answer, why did they drive into that area? But the central questions remain. Why did the car accelerate the way it did? Why was the pedal reportedly fully depressed? Why was no braking recorded? And does the complete physical evidence fit the explanations now being proposed? Those questions cannot be answered with maybe alone, which is, from the interview with Steve, everything was maybe. You cannot answer that with maybe alone. So I think it's fair to examine the petition seriously. If trial counsel possessed meaningful evidence and failed to investigate or introduce it, Mackenzie is entitled to have the legal system evaluate whether that failure violated her constitutional rights. That does not require us to assume the petition is frivolous, but it also does not require us to treat every newly raised possibility as established fact. The grocery claim may be verified, of course. Additional evidence may be presented that was never heard at trial. Those developments should be examined based on their actual evidentiary value. But until then, we have to keep asking the same question. Does this new information explain the evidence, or does it explain only one small part of the surrounding story? Because a destination is not an explanation for acceleration, and proof that they intended to pick up groceries does not explain why the vehicle reportedly reached such a high speed, or why the accelerator was reportedly fully depressed, et cetera, et cetera. And a theory built from possibilities remains only a theory until evidence connects those possibilities to what actually happened. So, guys, I would love to hear what you think. Do you believe the grocery pickup evidence could have meaningfully changed the judge's view of the case? Do you think it explains anything beyond why they may have been traveling in that area? And when Steve describes a perfect storm, do you hear a plausible alternative explanation, or a collection of possibilities that never fully addresses the vehicle data? So let me know in the comments and in the chat. And thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everyone who continues to support Motive and Method through watching, commenting, liking, sharing, and channel membership. I'm Stina, and this is Motive and Method. And remember, contradictions matter, and so does the difference between what is possible and what the evidence actually supports. That's the main analysis I wanted to bring you tonight. Now, I want to open this up and hear what you guys think, so we can do some chatting, get to know each other a little bit better. And also, you guys may notice, and probably do notice, things that I may not, that I have missed. And so I want this to be a conversation. So what do you guys think? Hi, Lakeside Lawyer. Lakeside Lawyer is in the house. Did I get it right, Lakeside Lawyer, about the petition? I hope so, anyway. Oh, Roxy. Hi, Roxy. Roxy made it. Thank you so much. Yay. Thank you. And yeah, let's see. Tomas Jules. Yeah, the Shirillas count on the goodness in people to believe their lies, and it shows they do not care who they use and abuse as a family unit. I agree. And also, you probably noticed, maybe from my attitude, I don't have any respect for people that lie, especially people that lie all the time. But it really stuns me that somebody would be going out on interviews and lying all the time when it's so easy to find out that they're lying. And I just can't understand that at all. It really stuns me, actually, amazes me, not in a good way either. So, and let me see here in the chat. Jamie Tibbetts. Hello, Jamie's a new member. So welcome, Jamie. Thank you very much for signing up for a membership. So I really appreciate it. The same with Wendy Williams is a member. So thank you so much. Yeah, you guys, it just warms my heart, the support that I found in this community too. And like I said, especially since you wouldn't think I'd be nervous coming on camera, but it's been a long time before this, public presentations. And then right before this, I was rushed because I was trying to get everything together. And then when I'm stressed, that suddenly a part of my brain goes, okay, I can't figure out anything. Where is the keys on my keyboard? No, I'm just kidding. What is Jamie? Okay. Oh yeah, Jamie, that was actually mentioned by someone. It was potatoes, if I remember correctly. Right, still no reason to go 100 miles per hour unless they were really hungry. I'm just joking. I shouldn't joke about it. Steve had said that they were going to be, I guess Dom's birthday was coming up or something, and he said that in there that she was going to make dinner for Dom for his birthday. So, but still, it's kind of, does it strike anybody as kind of odd that he didn't know exactly, he didn't know the details of that, or even if that was what happened, is that they actually went there to get groceries that he didn't know, and now suddenly it's in the habeas corpus petition. So yeah. Yeah. So Joyous Carrot, I'm sorry, I misread it. She said, I don't think it was premeditated. I believe she raged out in the moment. She definitely did it on purpose, in my opinion. Yeah, I tend to agree. My gut feeling, and it's just my opinion, is that something happened. And I really do think that Davian, I'm sorry, it might have had something to do with him, because knowing what we know about Mackenzie, and she said right after the crash that Davion was staying with them. So it could have been that she didn't want him taking up so much time, and she went into a rage. And I really think that that's probably what it was. She may have scouted out the area prior to that, because she did allegedly threaten to crash a car with him in it. But I think that if she really was scouting out the area, it was just in case. And then it just happened that day that she just freaked out. So let's see here. Oh yeah, Ride Wendy Williams enters the chat. Yeah, supposedly they left that house at 5 a.m. So it makes no sense after a night of hanging out to have to go pick up produce. Oh my God. Right? That early in the morning? Does anyone know, though, how far away Mackenzie and Dom lived from that area? Because I'm not familiar with that area at all. Okay, so we've got a Lakeside lawyer. Thank you. She says, FYI, federal judges receive petitions for a writ of habeas corpus from state prison inmates who say their state prosecutions violated federally protected rights in some way. Oh, good point, Lakeside lawyer. Yeah. And that's why I've heard it. I've heard writ of habeas corpus, which really doesn't mean literally, it means who has the body is what that means. I don't know how I remember that. And then I had to read a little bit more about it to find out what it actually means. And it's like, well, somebody is being held, like the charges, from what I understand, was not, they were wrongfully convicted, in other words. So thank you, Lakeside lawyer. And Love Knows No Words. I think she was in a rage and disassociated. I pronounce it dissociated from reality. I've heard it pronounced disassociated, so I had to go back and say, think, have I been saying this wrong? But no, that's the way it's spelled, is dissociated. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, I agree with you. Love knows no words. I think she was in a rage and dissociated from reality. And, if you watch, I know a lot of you check or go to Samantha Benigno's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, I Don't Belong Here channel, her show. She does believe that it was, Mackenzie dissociated, and she probably didn't know, she didn't realize the extent of it in that moment, that she just, went into a rage, fear or whatever, maybe of losing Dom, who knows what happened. And so I'm sure that after it happened and she woke up in the hospital or whatever, I'm sure she was devastated. She never wanted to lose Dom, I think. I'm sure she was devastated, but that doesn't mean she didn't do it on purpose for the moment, in my opinion, of course. And Wendy Williams says, I'm convinced her parents want this overturned or thrown out completely because they know it's going to be really hard for her to get parole. And when she does, she's never going to maintain it. Yeah, I agree. And I've said that, in other videos I've done before. It's like nobody, and I just find this horrible that they're not telling Mackenzie. They're making, in my opinion, they're encouraging Mackenzie to believe it's just some, it's going to be okay, and they're going to get her out, everything like that. And they're not telling her the truth. And so Mackenzie is doing what she's always done. She's going out there and, in that case, and causing trouble and getting into trouble. And so when she comes up for parole, she's not going to get parole. And it's also legal experts have said in Ohio, you're not going to get parole the first chance anyway. So she probably have to serve 20, 25 years maybe before she even has a real chance. And then if she keeps messing up, she's never going to get out. So let's see. Yeah, I agree. Love knows no words. She says Chris Cuomo claims she had to have wanted to self-harm, but I disagree. I don't think she was even thinking about the consequences. Yeah, I tend to agree too. We know that if she does have like borderline personality disorder, a lot of times there is self-harm ideation and everything. But I agree that I think she dissociated. Her anger was so out of control that she wasn't thinking about that at the time. So, and some of her earlier threats of harming herself could have been manipulative too, to get her parents to do what she wanted them to do. And that's not to say that always self-harm threats are manipulative, but sometimes they are, and she may have used that as a way to get them to do what she needs or what she wanted from her parents. Like when they grounded her, I didn't know until recently that was that whole self-harm threat was because she couldn't see Dom, and I guess he came and got her later that night. Someone told me. So you guys, it's so great too. You guys know so much more about the case than I actually do, because I don't have a chance to really read or listen to all the messages between Don and Mackenzie. And so I love it because you guys are telling me things that I don't know. And then it's like, okay, so now I know. So it's great because there's so much. I couldn't sit with some of those creators who's reading all the messages. Oh my gosh, there's no way that I could do that. Yeah, I agree. Love knows no word says to Wendy, every single friend and family member of the victims will be there fighting against her parole. Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing too, you guys, all the prison and the jail calls between her and her mom, that's all going to be played. when it comes up for parole. And it looks terrible when Natalie and Mackenzie are talking about Dom's evil family, his evil family. You know, it's like, I guess they didn't, I guess they never thought far enough ahead, or they didn't care, but that's not going to look good. Yeah, Lakeside, a lawyer, thank you. She says, in my view, this is the last way any prisoner can seek review of their conviction, by starting at the end point, so to speak. Thank you, Lakeside lawyer. Excellent point. I never thought about that. But yeah, when you can't get like parole, like your conviction reversed and everything, go for writ of habeas corpus. Absolutely. Yeah. And then, oh, good point. Yeah. Wendy Williams says, so true, but think about what it takes to maintain parole. Miss one appointment, failed drug screens. They're not going to humor her. And that was for a response to Love Knows No Words. Absolutely. And I think that's another thing is, in some ways I feel sorry for Mackenzie, because, and don't come for me, because, and from the standpoint that I don't think that her parents, it doesn't seem like her parents ever gave her proper guidance. Instead, they let her get away with everything, is what it appears to me, in my opinion. And you need to know boundaries to be a contributing member of society. Even if she did have some kind of a personality disorder, does have, it could have been modified if they had, you know, given her rules to follow, you know, and consequences for breaking those rules. And it doesn't seem like none of them did, which is so sad. So let's see. I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah, Kelly's struggling. Yeah, she says, I have been listening to the text messages and that girl was out of her mind. She really was. It's like, and poor Dom, it seems like Dom, and none of us are perfect, but it seems like Dom, he tried to break up with her several times, but he did have compassion, and she would apparently threaten to harm herself and drag him back each time, and he just really couldn't get away from her. But I think at the end, I think that he was on the way out, like of his own will, not the way it actually ended, and maybe that's what doomed him with the actions that she took that night, or that morning. Yes, for nine tempers. She said, it says, you know, Mackenzie has an older sister. The parents are way more strict with her than with Mackenzie, the baby of the family. Yes, I've heard some things too, and that's sad. We've not heard from the sister, and shouldn't she, you guys, shouldn't she be an adult now? Was she something like 3 years younger than? I've heard two things. I've heard she's older, but I think actually no, I think she's younger than Mackenzie. But yep. I'm just looking at the chat here. Yeah, Sharon says, most judges usually do not overturn other judges' orders or judgments. I agree. I think it's very few and far between, because I think it sets like a bad precedent. So they don't really like to do that. You and me both, Wendy. Wendy Williams says, I'm a little disappointed that the prison is allowing her to run amok like they are. Me too. Well, when she was at the end of Netflix, the crash, I was shocked that she's sitting at the table with her hair high on with a bun up on her hair, and just, it's not what I would think a prisoner would look like. And then we saw, I guess it's a very lenient, it's a rehabilitation place, which nothing wrong with rehabilitation, but man, it seems to me that she got pretty big penalty. Wasn't her remote meetings or whatever, wasn't that cut off because she did that like unacceptable? Why can't I think of the word face to face over Zoom calls or whatever? But so that really, she's not going to be able to do Zoom calls with her parents or anybody else for a while. Apparently, they came down hard on that one. But man, yes, Aquarius 458. I wonder who actually thought of this grocery angle. I wonder the same, and it could well be. Maybe she did. They drop off. Pick up the groceries there or whatever. But it just seems weird that Steve. That was a possibility, but Steve, it wasn't factual to Steve at the time. But now suddenly it's in this petition. So, but yeah. Yeah, I agree. Joyous Carrot is replying to Kelly, struggling. You're right. Those texts were disturbing. She was so abusive. She mentally tortured poor Dom. Yeah, that one we saw on video when he was he was filming that when she was demanding he let her in. And she was so verbally abusive to him, and probably has always been physically abusive to him as well. But yeah, love knows no words. I heard the sister is actually younger based on graduation records from their high school. Yeah, younger. And it's really weird because a lot of times the younger is the baby of the family, gets much different. It's been my experience too. Well, I'm one of 7, so the baby of the family. By that time, in my opinion, the mother is like, they've made all their mistakes or whatever, not all of them, with the older children. And so by the time it gets to the younger, they've got it, they know what they're doing or whatever. And also that's the baby. So but then what do you do if you have 2? So you have the Mackenzie, who seems to take the majority of the attention. And then you have the little sister or the younger sister who actually seems to not be treated very well. They're strict with her. And somebody brought up, and I had heard this too, I listened to it. It's like they took her bed frame away because it's like, oh my gosh. And because she put food under her bed. Well, as somebody else brought up, that's actually could be an emotional issue. Like it could be, you use food. You want to keep your food with you, as like a coping mechanism. So I'm not a psychologist or anything, but that makes sense. Yeah, so I'm just reading the chat here. You guys are great. Yeah, absolutely. Love knows no words. Absolutely. I don't think she says, has anyone actually confirmed that this location existed? Sounds like another after the fact attempt at excuse, like the supposed POTS diagnosis, right? That feels like that to me too. And I'm thinking, you kind of have to be pretty stupid to not have evidence of that. But then I hate to say this, but we've seen Steve and the things that he says and things that Natalie says. Would they attempt to make up some evidence? That wouldn't be a good thing, I wouldn't think. Yeah. Lakeside Lawyer says Mackenzie missed the local grocer by at least a mile. Dom was done with her and she wasn't having it, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. And you know what's, it kind of sounds like gossip, but I know it isn't. I did hear in passing that in one of the jail calls, she brought up to Natalie that when she woke up in the morning, Dom wasn't there. And I never heard the rest of the jail call. I'll need to go back and listen. But if that could be what really enraged Mackenzie, if she went into some jealous rage, or maybe she found out that he was seeing somebody else, which apparently he did cheat on her a few times. But, none of that, of course, excuses what she did. But that could have just been the one thing. And maybe that's why they left the house where they were staying, or overnight or whatever, that they left so early on a Sunday. So it's just a thought. Oh yeah, Wendy Williams says, I agree. In Natalie Cuomo's interview, when speaking about the POTS episode, she said it was a newly developed thing for her. And I always felt like that sounded like a slip. That's what Wendy Williams says. She always felt that sounded like a slip. I do too. And the way she described, I don't know anything about POTS except what I've read, but the way she described it, I mean, she did a backtrack with, in my opinion, with Cuomo. And she said, well, he asked her if Mackenzie remembered after an episode of POTS. And she goes, well, I never asked her. She said, remember, it was only the once. So she makes it sound like there was only one POTS pass out episode, is how I took that. So, yeah. So, hello, BB4294. Thank you for attending the live stream. So, yeah, I agree. That's what I've read. Love Knows No Words says, you also don't pass out from POTS when you've been sitting down for 30 minutes. It happens from a BP drop, blood pressure drop, when you go from laying down or sitting to standing. That's what I always felt. And one time Steve said something like, no, that's not the only way. It's like, I guess they said it can happen maybe a half an hour after changing positions or something. I think that's what he's trying to say. But yeah, but for most of us, that's just another excuse. I mean, I really can't understand. I can understand parents wanting their grown child out of prison and grasping at straws. But on the one hand, but in my opinion, on the other hand, there is accountability. So in my opinion, allegedly, my opinion, I do believe that they have some hand in that, because they apparently never got her under control, never did what they needed to do as parents. And even in the Netflix documentary, Steve is going, they'd call him into school and he'd go in and, I asked my daughter, did she do it? And she said, no. And he said, okay, that's good enough. Let's go. You're just like, so the school calls you in and you're going to believe your daughter that she didn't do what they're saying she did. That's just so wrong. So many levels. Okay. So just checking out the chat here. Kelly's struggling, yes, says her adult son has seizures and would never think of driving. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of reasons, maybe depends on the state, but it could be illegal to drive if you have a seizure disorder, depending. It probably varies depending on if you have medication and everything that can control it. Yeah, exactly. Lakeside lawyer who says he can't explain, suggests he's withholding information versus not knowing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Love Knows No Words. She says, I think Natalie researched POTS before the Cuomo interview, so she knew to mention the risk of non-epileptic seizures. Yeah. And didn't she, what is the word for that? I used to know the word. But yeah, she used the proper word for non-epileptic seizures. There's a term for that. I remember. I'm going, okay, well, that's pretty good. She knows that word. So yeah. And Cynthia Mackenzie, grasping at straws. Yep. That's exactly what it is. Oh, I'm sorry, Tomas, Jules, who says one of her lifelong friends has epilepsy and the grand mal seizures, and he has never been allowed to have a license. That is so horrible, I think, to have that condition. My heart goes out to him. That's got to be tough. Not to mention, if they're not well controlled, you really don't ever know when you could have a seizure. And that's, dangerous for you and for other people that might not know what to do about it as well. Wendy Williams says, I believe the POTS diagnosis was given by Natalie, but never provided a doctor's name or notes. So I'm wondering what she's going to come up with. Absolutely. And we know that in the school records that was in Discovery, they mentioned a diagnosis of POTS. So I don't think any doctor's name was there. And I've been told that it's not just a diagnosis based on your symptoms. There's a process to diagnose POTS. Is it like a tilted table or something like that? But oh, Love Knows No Words. I'm so sorry. Who says I've passed out from POTS and I go completely limp? Yeah, POTS and Kelly struggling. Yes, you guys. I'm thinking they come up with, and well, probably because now they're saying like the non-epileptic seizures. But that's what I assume too. If you pass out, anytime you pass out, your body goes limp. You don't go, your leg doesn't get stiff and press down on the accelerator. Fully depressed, but I think they're bringing that. In my opinion, I think they're bringing it up because they want us to believe that that's what happened, and even Steve says, I can't explain the speed. Well, no, because the speed is, she was driving like that on purpose. She was very curvy street. Man, that was dangerous, even if she wasn't enraged. I'm surprised she, kept it on the road. So, yeah. Juliet Soul said, she says, yeah, absolutely. Not the POTS again. They will need a doctor to say so. Absolutely. And so I'm thinking that if her attorney really never brought up the POTS, we know that Natalie, we do see a brief clip of her on the stand being testifying that Mackenzie had POTS. But you'd have to wonder why her attorney then didn't bring in evidence of that. So it makes me think there may not be evidence that would stand up in court. And plus, anybody else would go, well, POTS, you're going to pass out. So that's a non-starter. Unless you come up with this, type of seizure that can happen with that too, or non-epileptic seizures. So, thank you, Wendy Williams. So it's legal to have a license in Ohio with POTS as long as it's mild and controlled. Yeah. Yeah, and Jamie Tibbetts, I fully believe that's why no doctor would testify to it. Absolutely. Because they couldn't, that's a great point. I didn't think about that before. So even if she did have POTS, they're not going to get on the stand and testify that can make you drive 100 miles an hour, when you, pass out or whatever. So they're not going to get in trouble with the medical board and everything from being, claiming something like that. Not to mention legally to lie about something like that, So let's see here. Yeah, Love Knows No Words. Yeah, that her symptoms were more likely from severe malnutrition, because I think also was part of the medical findings or whatever, the record when she went to the hospital after the crash, is severe malnutrition, wasn't it? So, yeah, and she was very, very underweight, in my opinion. So. Right, BB 4294. Cuomo found someone to lie for the Shaquilla's family. Yep. And Cuomo he believes that they didn't have any evidence of intent. And I disagree. I think because who's going to have evidence? It's all based really on putting the different circumstantial pieces together to form a picture. And that's the way, very seldom in any crimes do you have direct evidence like a witness that saw something or anything like that. It's all put together by analysis and circumstances. And if you have, well, I guess DNA would be more direct evidence, of course. If you have DNA, that would change it. But so. Yeah. Lakeside Lawyer says, great point. They insist based on her character, she would never. Meanwhile, everyone sees her character preceding the crash. Absolutely. And it just does feel to me like her parents are in denial on the one hand, but I believe they are well aware of her issues. And so they just don't want her to pay for what she did. And so they keep trying to tell her that she didn't do anything wrong. If you listen to the jail calls with Natalie and Mackenzie, every time occasionally Mackenzie does try to take some kind of, accountability. And right away, Natalie goes, oh, no. And they really will not let her feel bad about anything. And I don't mean feel bad, you should feel bad, but sometimes we need to feel bad. We need to feel badly that we did something wrong. So, yeah, Tomas Jules, absolutely. She says, her POTS defense is total BS because if you knew she had a condition that made her pass out, why would they get her a car and a license? Absolutely. Not to mention she was always a reckless driver from what I understand. So Kelly's struggling 4 years, POTS, and groceries. Wow. Yep. Love knows no words. As to Wendy, she conveniently forgot everything after safely turning the corner. Oh my goodness. That's exactly it. Great point, Barry. 1995 has POTS but no symptoms or POTS episodes while in prison. Great point. Apparently none that we've heard. So Roxy, absolutely, Roxy. Just from all the lame reasons for the appeal, she shouldn't ever get out. It's true. Wouldn't it be great if there was some kind of a prison sentence for stupidity? I'm just kidding, but not. Some people, well, actually, maybe there would be a lot more people locked up if stupidity were a crime, but man, sometimes it should be. So let's see. I'm just reading the chats. Oh, Lakeside Lawyer. Yes. Thank you. Who says his statement strongly suggests deception. It had to leave juvenile court based on the seriousness of the offenses. It wasn't really optional. I've read Ohio Revised Code. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. What a great point. And, and add to it that I think it was either a day or 2 days before her 18th birthday. And that's what makes me sometimes think that, yeah, she planned it for then because she thought it would be a lighter sentence, in my opinion. That's what she could have been thinking. But the other part, as I also agree, that I think she went into rage and I've known people that can go into the see red, or just, you don't even remember what they've done when they go into a rage like that. So, which is scary, both for them and for anybody else in their way when they get into that, when they go into that kind of a rage. Let's see. Yeah, Wendy Williams, that's a great point. She says, you can tell Steve is so anxious for Mackenzie to blame one of those boys. You can hear it in his voice when he's talking about it. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really offensive, I think, to all of us listening to that, much less the parents of those boys. They were innocent victims in this entire thing. And Mackenzie, I don't know how she survived. And I can't believe that she would have known she would survive, even though she was wearing a seatbelt when apparently she never had before, when people were looking at her, driving and things. But she's the one that survived. And, those two boys lost their lives, and they had so much to live for. And it's horrible. Yeah, absolutely, Jamie Tibbetts. Yes, who says they try 15-year-olds as adults. So why not someone 2 days from her 18th birthday? Exactly. I've been appalled. There was a period, I can't remember the cases, of 10-year-old boys being tried as adults. And and of course, it was a serious crime. I think it was unaliving somebody, intentional. But still, it's like 10 years old. But yeah. Yep. Okay. So just looking at here. Yes, absolutely. Love knows no words. I keep wanting to say love knows no bounds. I'm sorry if I actually slipped and said that. If Dom grabbed the wheel, it was to try and save their lives. I absolutely believe that. And you see, that's another thing. They tried to bring up that she did that. She texted saying that Dom had grabbed the wheel. That's after when she threatened to crash the car with him in it. And some people will look at that like, well, that proves it. And that's what Steve tries to do. Well, I have actually known people like that are so manipulative that they will actually make something like that up once, because she was caught, his mother, and knew all about it. So what to do? You just send a text message and you blame him for grabbing the wheel. And if I remember, his response was, "You're tripping," or something like that. I mean, he was kind of non-committal about that. But so, yeah. Amen, Lakeside lawyer. He says, I trade 5 of Kenzie's years if Natalie and Steve could be imprisoned in her behalf. They're actually responsible for the boys' deaths, in my view, based on breadth and depth of information. Absolutely. And that's what gets me to, Steve goes, there is no evidence. There is no evidence of intent, no evidence. It's a preponderance of evidence, really, which is a civil case anyway. It's not criminal. But you start building up those little pieces of the picture, the puzzle, and it forms the intent. But I guess he doesn't. He wants to double talk, I think. So let's see. Yes, Lakeside lawyer. Yeah, Steve said she killed those 2 boys and tried to kill herself. That is actually documented. And I have not seen it, but I know that the Dom's sister said for some reason it wasn't presented at trial, but that is in the records from, I don't know if it's a hospital or the detective's records or whatever. So he did say that. They know very well that she did this on purpose. So I agree, Tomas Jules, who says, in my opinion, they have been covering up for her since day one. They all knew the truth, but choose to lie and obfuscate instead. Yeah, I totally agree. Oh, yes. And love knows no words. Yes, they had all her texts. So, yeah, they've seen all of that, everybody. So, absolutely. Yeah, and Jamie Tibbetts has said she was so abusive to him. Yeah, and WZOQTV says, I can't believe they're trying to take this federal. In some ways, I could say I agree, but in other ways, I'm thinking, what other steps do they have, really? I mean, the Ohio Supreme Court refused to hear this case. So what other steps do they have? Yeah, exactly. And yes, Wendy Williams, who says, yep, why was the pedal to the metal and no braking or steering correction? And until Mackenzie opens her mouth and explains, you know, I have never, ever had the pedal to the metal. Never. Because you'd have to be, I don't know anything technical about stuff like that, but I don't think I've ever known anybody that's ever had the gas pedal to the floorboard, unless it was to truly escape from some terrible person who was after them or whatever. Yeah. So. Oh, Jamie Tibbetts, absolutely. Her saying Dom grabbed the wheel 2 weeks before and asked if she wanted to die. She says, I think he grabbed the wheel out of safety and asked her, what are you doing? Do you want to die? Oh, that's a great point. That makes a lot more sense. And that's exactly what anybody would do that was trying to stop her too. If she was, trying to, drive, crash a car with someone in it. I don't know why Dom got in the car with her that morning, but I think that he was just so, and Davion is so used to her threats and stuff, and he didn't have another ride maybe, but I just wish those two boys didn't get in the car with her that morning. But if not then, unless he would have broken up with her, it unfortunately may have been some other time and place. Yeah, exactly. The LWLW 3393 says, why did she not remember this before? We did insist the route was a common cut through, no mention of grocery. She says, as you said, that's never been the question, needing alternative answer. Really? And Natalie and Steve go on their press tours and they've never really talked about that. Now suddenly it's in the habeas corpus, habeas petition. So yeah. Yeah. Hi, boss lady. I didn't see you there. How are you? Yay, boss lady has entered the chat. Thank you for joining us, boss lady. Roxy says all three are psychos is what I think. I think we both got that idea from everything that we've seen. Oh, thank you so much for the super chat, Lakeside Lawyer. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. She says, we have the same undergrad degree. Thank you for your analysis. Oh, thank you. Lakeside Lawyer, I had wanted actually to be a lawyer at one time. And this is terrible, but I actually got a paralegal certificate degree a long, long time ago. And then I went to intern for this small law firm. And I hate to say this, but I was so turned off by the way those attorneys acted in that small office, that just really insulting and everything. I changed my mind about going for a legal degree. I hate to say that, but yeah. And I love the communication degree. So it really helps a lot with everything, really. So thank you so much. Oh, okay. Yeah, Wendy Williams, absolutely. She goes, I agree. Her parents are going hard, but is Mackenzie really that unhappy where she's at? I mean, she's living pretty comfortably. Absolutely. And it does really see it like she was selling from prison things. And it's like, that's not prison. How is that prison? I don't know, Roxy. Roxy asked, was Dom into cooking? I don't know. According to the Crash documentary, they cooked meals together and everything. So, yes, absolutely, Lakeside Lawyer. He's throwing around what ifs. So all the time. And that's what gets me, because it's like, he goes, the prosecution doesn't have anything. They can't prove any of this. They can't prove intent. But he's throwing away around all the time what ifs. It could be this, it could be that, it might be this, but it wasn't. My daughter did not do this on purpose. And we know from the records that, I don't know why it didn't make its way into the trial, but he admitted that she did that on purpose. You know, they know what she did. And I really do think they're afraid for something's going to happen to her in prison, like her harming herself if they don't tell her the truth, that she may be in there the rest of her life, especially if she doesn't straighten up. But I tell you, my parents were rough, especially my mom. My dad wasn't so much, my mom was, but in some ways I'm thankful for that, because I learned how to act, and, you know, and how to behave in public and what not to do. And we always got, because that was the day, you know, it wasn't just spanked. It was more severe than that back, you know, a long time ago. And, but so we knew that what would be in store for us if we acted up and everything like that. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, you know, for children and everything, but you need to, Mom always did say that kids need boundaries. They need to know their boundaries. If they don't feel like they're loved. And I agree. And one of my sister's little friends had said at the time that she loved coming over to our house because, you know, our mom loved us because she had all these rules, and her parents, that little girl's parents, just let her do whatever. So I think there's some truth to that. But anyway, so you guys, what do you think? You want to call it a night? And I'll agree to, I'm getting over my nerves a little bit doing this. So I'm planning to have lives more frequently because I love to meet all of you too, and to like communicate back and forth. And I've said before, you know, in the community notes, I love this community. And my last Steve video, there were 4 or 5 people that actually calculated how fast how far that car would have gone in those 4.7 whatever seconds. They did the math, and it's phenomenal. So all of the this is wonderful, and everybody's like engaging with each other. Nobody's nasty. Everybody will give their entire, you know, their own opinion and everything, of course, but it's not any kind of a nasty thing. And I've been around the true crime community long enough as a consumer to know that it's not always like that in the true crime community. So I feel so blessed. And hi, Danny, the magic junk drawer. Hello, that's okay. See, you can replay the live stream and everything later. So I'm glad that you could make it. So that's great. Yeah. Here's Crafty Claudette says, those parents need to just let it be. Besides, she's thriving in jail. She really is. It's like, gosh, if I went to jail, I want to be in that jail. Not. Oh, my biggest fear because I don't like being controlled or being I feel suffocated at the thought that I would not be able to leave. That alone would keep me from doing anything illegal that would get me in prison, because it's like, I would die. I know I would die. So not literally, why I might. Well, that's another thing. I hate to say this, but I've said this in another live stream. It's like, I thought at first Natalie kept saying to Mackenzie that I just want you to be safe. And I'm thinking, safe from what? Well, I thought safe from getting her butt kicked by going off on some of those other girls in that prison. It could happen. But I think she's talking more, maybe that she knows the way Mackenzie can just explode and do terrible things. So she doesn't want that happening. Maybe. I'm not sure though. Yeah, love knows no words. True. She says, replying to @Dezen, I think Natalie is so afraid of Mackenzie going into a rage that she'll do anything, including the baby voice, to calm her down. Absolutely. A lot of people have commented that Natalie's talking to her like she's one of her, like of the same age, a friend. And it's just, oh my gosh, that's just not what a mother should do. Maybe later on, but you just don't want to put yourself on the same level as a child when you're supposed to be the mother, because I do think they lose respect for you, and kids will be kids, and there'll be manipulation and things that they'll figure out that they can do to get things their way as well. So Lakeside Lawyer, thank you for becoming a member. I'm so new at this. I wasn't sure if that's what it was said. Thank you so much. I know that you've been a part of my community for a while, and I always appreciate all of you. But yeah, but I don't always remember names. I might remember more like pictures, but I don't, depending on the name, I might not always remember the name. So, but, so I guess you guys, let's wrap this up, call it a night. I've had a great time. I hope you guys have as well. And yeah, and I just look forward to seeing you guys in the chat, communicating with each other. And oh, Lakeside Lawyer, I have to tell you this. For one person, I think, or I'm telling everybody this, one person in the last video I did said, if you have something like, if you have the communication degree or whatever you say you have, that's how I took it. She goes, you should know that it's not 3.75, it's 3.75. The seconds of the black box recording, 3.75, like Steve said. And I'm thinking, I just kind of laughed. I was a little angry, but I laughed because it's like, I'm not math is not my thing. And that 3.75 is how I say it. But if it's something different with the black box, I would have no way of knowing. That's not part of a communication degree. So it's like, what are you talking about? I just figured out, I think she was on Steve's side. So she tried to pick one thing out of the entire video that she could try to shame me on. It's like, not this time, lady. I think it was a lady. I'm not sure. So, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, boss lady. I think you mentioned that before, in fact. She says POTS is basically going from sitting to standing up too fast and you get dizzy. It happens to me daily if I don't watch myself. It would make you go limp. Thank you. So let me get this straight, boss lady. In no situation would it actually make you stiffen. I shouldn't even joke about this. Like go stiffen your leg and tramp the gas pedal down, would it? LOL. So I agree. Just Pepper 9246. This the weeks leading up to Mackenzie killing them, she had contempt towards Davion too. I've come across that in the text messages too. So yes, absolutely. Yeah, Lakeside Lawyer says she's at a summer camp. Oh my goodness. Beezer. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. It's been such a wonderful chatting with you guys. And I want to say again, I just appreciate your support so much. It's unbelievable, really, because when I started into true crime, I don't know what I expected. And plus, with a channel, you create videos for a while and you might wait forever for 10 views. And it takes a while to build up. So by that time, it's like, well, I don't know, I'm just going to keep doing this. And I'm glad I did, because now it's gotten very, very different for me. Thanks to you guys. I really appreciate it. So, Samuel's in the house too. Samuel Campbell. I missed you. Okay. A lot of you are new names too. Thank you, you guys. Yeah. Syncope. Yeah, that's a word, Lakeside Lawyer. I was trying to think of what the name is for what Natalie was trying to use that time. She brought that up. So, we gotta address this, you guys, before we get off here. I'm not sure that username, the words are so, Rocco Bolognese 8179. Who believes the warm milk stands for some sort of benzo? Oh, the father used for leverage like weed. Ooh, I never thought about that. Some people are thinking that it means more like a terrible thing. And I didn't know what to think. Somebody brought up another explanation. It is something about the weed. I figured it was some kind of shorthand, but I don't know. Or like code word or something. Vasovagal, syncope. Yep, love knows no words. Yeah, absolutely. Stop with your racism, says. It's funny, she's not had any episodes in day camp. Really. Do you know they have cottages? I'm thinking prison. And then I find out they have cottages and everything. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just like so behind the times, apparently. Oh, yes. Thank you. There's 140 people watching. Yes, please hit the like button. I would appreciate it because it helps the algorithm. Yes, thank you, Wendy Williams. 140 people watching. Yes. Yes, Roxy says, yeah. Wendy, yes, Wendy, I looked it up too. That's a tilted table test. Thank you. I was trying to think of what the name of that test was for POTS. Yeah, love those. I think you mean Caesar, or something. You guys are cracking me up. Caesar. It's like, why would you? Well, that wouldn't make the word very easy to say, would it? Okay, so I'm going to. Lakeside Lawyer, good point. She said you can typically get a medical expert to say almost anything if there are any medical records. This is true. And the professional witnesses, like the professional experts. So you have psychologists and psychiatrists, and I hate to say this, but it would, for the money, it makes me think that they would say whatever if they had some kind of backing, medical records that they could use to point to that. Okay, so It's been so fun. Oh yeah, Lakeside lawyer too also says it was sort of poetic justice that her appeal was one day late. I thought of that, and I'm thinking, what lawyer? I know there was leap year, but don't you, just to be late like that, and you had a long time to create that appeal and everything to file it, but apparently. Okay, so on that note, I'm going to reluctantly let you guys go to enjoy your weekend. It has been so wonderful. I'm chatting with you. And again, I can't say it enough. Thank you so much for your support. It's just overwhelming a lot. And more than that, like I've said, it's just the support within the community itself that, there are some people that don't like the videos, but then I think they would probably not dare come in and actually make a comment because they would be like outnumbered. And yet our community, unless they were really disrespectful and mean, well, in that case, I would totally block them. But we'd still be all really nice and everything, just as long as they weren't, personal assaults and things like that, or personal fighting toward us and everything. Everybody's allowed to have their own opinion, of course. So, yeah. So on that note, I will let you guys go. It's been an hour and a half. So have a great weekend, everyone. I'm going to try to get another live sometime this weekend. I was thinking Saturday, but it might be Sunday. I can't remember now who it is. I think it's one of the members it brought up, the OnlyFans model, her that said she threw a knife at her boyfriend and he unalived him. Her trial is coming up in August. So I'm going to look up. I've only recently saw a few shows about this when it showed how physically abusive she was toward him. That's shocking because women can be just as physically abusive and men can be battered as well. But I was just shocked at that. So I might go into that, but I'll need to do some more research. So anyway, on that note, I'll let you guys go. Thank you again, and I'll see you all soon. And thanks. Down here.